Hey guys, and welcome back to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion number 264, texture streaming, and Scarhoof couldn't find his mic today, so he's not joining us, but we are joined by Afflixion.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, so you're here to help out with the technical stuff, which is pretty much the entire Friday Facts.
Yeah, I've been the one writing the technical summaries, and this one was so in-depth, I was like, I should probably actually get on the call this time.
Yeah, which is good, because I don't really know what any of this is. Pretty much. I guess we'll kind of start. You did write a summary, which I will try to go through. I'm trying to figure out like what parts I should use a summary for and what parts I should actually straight read from the article.
Let's go with the summary for the Bitmap Cache section. That one's my summary is pretty in-depth on that one.
Okay, so let me go here. So we have the summary. So Bitmap Cache. So the low VRAM mode uses texture streaming, and basically that's there's not enough VRAM on the GPU to contain all necessary textures. The most important textures include in the Atlas giant canvas of sprites. Everything else loaded individually and replaced as necessary, only sent to GPU when needed for rendering.
So that last bullet point there, that's what streaming is. That's the texture streaming part of it.
Okay.
The GPU doesn't have the memory to store everything, so we need to decide when we send it to the GPU. And sending it on demand is basically streaming.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that makes more sense. Bitmap Cache handles all this texture streaming logic. Max limit of how many megabytes of textures in use at once. If this limit is reached, old render falls back to software rendering, much slower than hardware rendering. It tanks UPS or FPS, sorry, and infrequent. Luckily, I think you've got a word. Maybe.
That Yeah, basically this happens infrequently, luckily.
Luckily. Oh, right. Duh. Okay. New render does not fall back to software rendering. Yay. And it just gets a sprite or crashes. Boo.
Yeah, no crashes. That's not good.
Yeah. That's usually bad. So there's some other performance issues. Different sprite sizes can't reuse sprites already allocated. Creating destroying textures constantly. Rendering is slow. Memory fragmentation. Lots of small textures being created and destroyed causes the free memory to be spread out into tiny chunks rather than one big chunk. Memory can only be allocated as one continuous chunk. If there's no chunk big enough, memory allocation fails and the program crashes.
Yeah, if you've ever heard of back in the day before SSDs, if you've ever defragmented your hard drive, that's what this means. It means moving everything that's currently allocated and in use into one continuous block of memory so that the rest of the drive is also one continuous block of memory.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Sprite batching does not work for individual sprites, as I mentioned in Friday Facts 251.
Another one that I wrote a summary for, if I remember.
Yes, I believe you did. Okay, so that takes care of that first section, pretty much.
Yeah, the Bitmap Cache is the name of the class that they wrote to handle all this texture streaming logic, and they did that in 0.16 actually. The low VRAM mode was added in 0.16, and it's essentially texture streaming.
Right.
But if you remember, recently they said that they're completely redoing the renderer for 0.17, so that old logic is not necessarily valid anymore.
Okay, right. Yeah, they are going to redo that. Okay, so if we go to the virtual texture mapping, let's see, is this something we want to actually look at the article for? Oh dear.
The article is also just a bunch of text. A lot of it is kind of repeated, like not like copy pasted, but the same concepts over and over.
Right.
Which is why the summary is shorter for this one than it was for the first section.
All right, then we'll just use this. So virtual texture mapping. Use one big sprite as to contain all textures, but don't load it all into texture memory at once. So there's like the virtual memory. Virtual memory is essentially an address lookup table. Every addressable item has a dedicated location in virtual memory. The virtual memory location contains the physical address of the item. The physical address can be changed as necessary.
Yeah, this is a very complicated topic. Virtual memory is essentially how your operating system works. It's how every program running on your operating system can technically use all, like, let's say 4 gigabytes of RAM that's available to it, even though it's not necessarily using all 4 gigabytes.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds complicated.
Yeah, it was a difficult topic in school.
Yeah, so I'm sure only a couple people actually understood that part in the Friday Facts. So Virtual Atlas is divided into 128 by 128 pixel pages. Only the necessary pages are physically loaded to memory. No creating, destroying textures, just updating.
Yeah, one of the performance issues that they had with individually loading the sprites was that they're all different sizes. So they constantly had to create and destroy textures on the GPU, which is a really slow process. The fact that they're just able to write the data over because every page has the same size, that's the huge performance gain right there.
Okay, I see. And then there's space limitations. So space limitations are still present. Zooming out causes more sprites to be needed, obviously. Use lower resolution sprites in that case.
Yeah, so when you zoom out, obviously you're seeing more of the map. And when you see more of the map, you obviously have more sprites that you need to display. The good thing is you don't have to see them in full resolution because you're zoomed out. So that's what if we go back to the summary, sorry, not the summary, if we go back to the FFF, the Friday Facts, he talks about MIP maps there. That's basically different versions of the same sprite, but at different resolutions.
Okay.
So if you're zoomed out, then they can scale the resolution of the texture down and not have to use as much memory for everything.
Okay. So yeah, some performance gains and such there. And then we can move down to the GPU rendering performance, which I will look at the Friday Facts for because I like most of this that I'm looking at actually makes sense-ish.
And this one has pictures. Pictures are nice.
Pictures help a lot. So the main motivation behind texture streaming is to make sure the game is able to run with limited resources without having to reduce visual quality too much. According to the Steam hardware survey, almost 60% of our players who have a dedicated GPU have at least 4 gigabytes of VRAM, and this number grows as people upgrade their computers. So VRAM sizes by year. You can see kind of the colors here and the year.
Yeah, so in 2016, less than half of people had 4 or more gigabytes. 2017, we had a little bit over 50%. Now 2018, we have almost 60%.
Yeah. So we have received quite a lot of bug reports about rendering performance issues from people with decent GPUs, especially since we started adding high-resolution sprites. Our assumption was that the problems were caused by the game wanting to use more video memory than available. The game is not the only application that wants to use video memory, and the graphics driver has to spend a lot of time to optimize accesses to the textures. During the graphics rewrite, we learned a lot about how contemporary GPUs work and are still learning, and we were able to utilize the new APIs to measure how much time rendering takes on a GPU. To simply draw a 1920 by 1080 image to a render target of the same size, it takes these amount of times on these GPUs. So it's interesting. I'm guessing they didn't test any more powerful ones because it would be like so nominal, or because I mean you don't see anything above a 1060 here.
Yeah, I mean 0.1 milliseconds is already nothing in terms of computing time.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It doesn't make sense to enumerate the ones lower than that.
Okay. So this seems to scale linearly with the number of pixels written, so it would take roughly 0.4 milliseconds for the GTX 1060 to render the same thing in 4K. That's pretty fast, but our...
Yeah, also keep in mind, this is not the actual process of determining what the pixels should be. This is literally just drawing the pixels.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, no calculations whatsoever. Just transfer this pixel to the screen.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that kind of makes a difference then.
Yeah, there's no way a GTX 1060 did a 4K resolution full render in zero point 0.4 milliseconds.
No, no, no way.
It drew it in that amount of time, but it didn't take that short of a time to do all the calculations.
Right, right. So that's pretty fast, but our sprites have a lot of semi-transparent pixels. We also utilize transparency in other ways, from drawing ghosts and applying color masks to drawing visualizations like logistic area or turret ranges. This results in large amounts of overdraw pixels being written to multiple times. We knew overdraw was something to avoid, but we didn't have any good data on how much it happens in Factorio until we added the overdraw visualization. So the game scene being rendered, and then overdraw visualization. Cyan is 1 draw, green is 2, and red is greater than or equal to 10. So that's a lot.
Yeah, essentially, a good chunk of that picture is red, which means that those pixels were written to 10 or more times. That's a lot of extra work just to draw this scene.
Yeah, for sure. Now what's interesting
and
is
when
that...
Sorry, and when it takes 2 milliseconds for a Radeon HD 6450 to draw that, that's going to jump up to like 10 milliseconds just to draw, because you have so much of it being redrawn all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it begins to add up, and what I find interesting is, like, you can see like the miners and stuff are kind of red, but then like the burner drills and furnaces are just solid red. So for some reason, those are being redrawn.
The vegetation
much more
on the ground too. The vegetation is red.
Yeah, well, I think we have known that ground foliage and stuff is pretty bad for FPS and stuff. But yeah, trees obviously
But this next picture is kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, so overdrive visualization, when we discard transparent pixels, and you can see it's massively better. There's actually cyan in the picture when there was none in the above one. And then green is very prominent, and then there's just a few bits of red, again, mostly with the burner drills and furnaces.
Yeah. That's a much better picture. I like that picture a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely an improvement.
Make all the performance like that, please.
Yes, that'd be great. Like pipes. So interestingly, discarding completely transparent pixels didn't seem to make any performance difference on modern GPUs, including the Intel HD. Drawing sprites with a lot of completely transparent pixels is faster than an opaque sprite without having to explicitly discard transparent pixels with shaders. However, it did make differences on Radeon HD 6450 and GeForce GT 300M, so perhaps modern GPUs throw away pixels that wouldn't have any effect on the result automatically.
That would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you would think, with these modern ones, they've probably implemented that ability. Anyway, GTX...
modern GPUs are a lot smarter than they used to be.
Oh, yeah.
They can make all these improvements on the hardware side so that the software doesn't even have to worry about it.
Right, exactly. So GTX 1060 renders a game scene like this in 1080p in 1 millisecond. That's fast, but it means in 4K it would take 4 milliseconds, 10 milliseconds on integrated GPUs, and more that a single frame worth of time, 16.66 milliseconds, on old non-gaming GPUs. No wonder, seems heavy on smoke or trees can tank FPS, especially in 4K. Maybe we should do something about that. Yeah, that'd be nice. Because there's a lot of trees. So I guess that's just even more incentive to just kill all the forests in the game as quickly as you can.
Yeah, my most recent playthrough, I've already filled a couple of wooden boxes full of wood just from the trees that I've chopped down. I've used like 6 steel axes.
Oh my god. It's it's pretty bad. I've started to just get really annoyed with trees. I'm tempted, like, because I think there is an option to just turn them off in the map generator. I think
there is, but then how would you get power?
I mean, I think I forget if it's like a on off or if there's settings. You could just set it like super low maybe.
Yeah, I don't have it open to check right now, but
yeah. So that'd be good. And then smoke, of course. Like, I mean, I haven't even played with. I don't think I've played with clouds or smoke on unless I like get a new version of the game, forget to turn it off. I usually don't play with those on, and I haven't for like a year and a half or something, because they're just like they just hurt FPS so much when you get enough of it.
Yeah, and then before, was it before 0.16 or before 0.15 that they affected UPS as well?
I think it was. I forget. I think it was before 0.16. I think 16 is when they made like smoke and stuff not an entity.
Okay, yeah, that
Which,
would make sense. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, that definitely helped. You know, it doesn't help the FPS problems much, but um,
Yeah, this is still an FPS problem here. This is none of what we talked about today was about UPS.
right. So yeah, hopefully they get that to work. Basically, the takeaway from this is trees and smoke bad, and they did some stuff to improve performance for older GPUs. Based on what they're saying, if you have like a fairly modern GPU, then pretty much none of this is going to apply to you.
None of the last section is going to apply.
Right.
The texture streaming, that also applies.
Okay. Good point.
Because I mean the 1060 still only has 4 or 6 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, depending which one you get. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a relatively expensive GPU. I mean, it's good for the money, but it's still like the cost of a laptop potentially.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's quite a bit. So, um, yeah, I think that's gonna do it. This one was like super technical, so I'm glad you were
Yeah,
here.
I felt like I was going back to school reading this. So
Yeah, sorry about that. Um,
thanks, Posilla.
yeah, but yeah, that's gonna do it, guys. As always, thank you for watching. Leave any thoughts, questions you have below, although I probably won't be able to answer them. And until next time, we'll see you later.